more sign. That's different.
Blue shirts for television.
That's what I was, and I had blue eyes.
Well, you're one up on us, or at least on me.
But that's why I'm wearing
I don't know.
it. Did my blue eyes show up on TV?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Good evening, I'm Rob Martin, and welcome to OutTV Atlanta's Election 2000. This is a 30-minute forum discussing major issues now important to America, to Georgia, and to Atlanta, but perhaps most importantly to gay Americans everywhere, about our political future on the eve of the November 19, Start from the start, from the top. Sorry, gentlemen. We should have known this was going to happen. Good evening, I'm Rob Martin, and welcome to OutTV Atlanta's Election 2000. This is a 30-minute forum discussing major issues now important to the United States, to Georgia, to Atlanta, but most important perhaps to all gay Americans about our political future on the eve of the November 2000 election. Our guest, in alphabetical order, we have a W and we have a Y. Representing Georgia's Stonewall Democrats, Dr. Bob Whitelaw Jr. Good evening, Bob. From Georgia's Log Cabin Republicans, that organization's communications director, Mr. Mark Yeager. Welcome, Mark. Our guests each have provided a short biographical sketch. Dr. Bob Whitelaw Jr. is a native of Decatur, Georgia. He has a medical degree. He served in the United States Air Force and is the father of 3 sons. He is a member of the Georgia Stonewall Democrats and a board member of the National Stonewall Democratic Federation. Perhaps most importantly, he testified at the 2000 Democratic Convention Platform Drafting Committee and served on the 2000 DNC's Rules Committee. He also serves on the Campaign Advisory Committee of the Gay and Lesbian Office of the Democratic National Committee.
The one
Let's go back.
all right. Could you say that, leave out Georgia Stonewall Democrats and just say Stonewall Democrats?
I'm going to repeat it later is the problem.
That would be, you could repeat it later, correct it.
And correct it.
No, and what I'm saying is I use Georgia Stonewall Democrats throughout this script. You didn't tell me this.
Sorry.
What's the problem?
Our president doesn't want it to be Georgia Stonewall Democrats because she wants to be the official she is the official spokesperson.
Just take your script and scratch it out.
Yeah, we're going to have to stop a minute.
You need a pen?
No, I have a pen. All right. Rolling. As noted, Mr. Mark Yeager is Communications Director of Georgia's Log Cabin Republicans. He is active in the Georgia State GOP, serving as delegate to district, county, and state conventions. He serves on Georgia Equality Project's Board of Directors. Professionally, Mark is a physical therapist. He's a Colorado native and a resident of Atlanta for 3.5 years. So welcome, gentlemen. We've discussed the rules. There is limited time in this brief encounter. Keep your responses, please, as succinct as you can. And this is not a debate. Neither guest is running for office. This is a discussion of key issues, and our guests' views are their own or of their parties as indicated. So let's begin. Mr. Yeager won the toss before, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to pick it up there. You won the toss, but elected to receive. See, that was the problem because I thought you were going to ask the question. Let's try this again.
When I ask my question, do I look at the camera? Or...
Address it to him.
Okay.
We'll pick up right there.
Looking down, reading.
Let's begin. Mr. Yeager will ask the first question based on a coin toss before airtime to Dr. Whitelaw.
Dr. Whitelaw, are the Stonewall Democrats going to endorse Governor Zell Miller for the U.S. Senate?
The Georgia Stonewall Democrats do not endorse at all. We're not a PAC, so legally we cannot do an endorsement. So the answer to your question is no, we will not, because legally we cannot do that.
Yeah.
Would you like to ask a follow-up about what's your point about Governor Miller?
Yeah, will...
Or Senator Miller now.
Yeah. Do the Stonewall Democrats support him in his candidacy, even though you may not be able to do an official endorsement? Do you support his candidacy? And my concern is that after leaving his office, his tenure as governor, he did state that he felt like his popularity was due to the fact that he had avoided gay issues. While he was in office, he did sign into law a ban on gay marriages and avoided any increased funding for AIDS drug assistance programs. So
what is your issue?
Based off of that, do you feel like he should become Georgia's senator, replace Paul Coverdale, or Mac Mattingly, who has met with gay organizations and is reaching out to our community?
I cannot speak for Georgia Stonewall. I'm not their official spokesperson. Jamie Higgins, our president, is. But I will be happy to answer your question if you will ask it as an individual.
Please, please, it's ask as an individual question.
Okay.
We said that.
What are your opinions?
What are your opinions, Bob?
Okay. Personally, I support Zell Miller in his candidacy to become our senator, or to continue to be our senator from Georgia. Zell Miller has pledged not to discriminate in hiring in his office, and he has also supported hate crimes legislation. Matt Mattingly has not supported hate crimes legislation, has not made a decision on a lot of other issues, as Zell Miller has not made issues. I fully recognize that a lot has been made, especially because of the fact that Mattingly met with Harry Knox and also with Mansell McCord, who's the president of Log Cabin, and they've made a big deal about the fact that Zell Miller has not met with any gay people.
Gentlemen, we need to move on. Would you please make your point?
My point is Zell Miller called me this afternoon at my home and spoke to me about his concern that rumors were spreading that he was not supportive of gay issues and was trying to avoid a meeting with us. He paralleled it to a question he received in the debate that was on public television, where he was accused of not supporting women's issues because he missed an important women's meeting. His explanation at that time was that he was in Washington being a senator, and he certainly supported women's issues. He reassured me on the phone that the reason that he has not met with us is because he has not been in the state. He reaffirmed his support for hate crimes prevention and has told me what he's been doing in Washington to help the Democratic Party pass that legislation. He wanted the gay and lesbian community, we haven't educated him, to include...
Gentlemen, we're going to have to move on.
To know that he is not avoiding a meeting with us. It's simply a matter of he has to be in Washington being our senator right now.
Gentlemen, no, you'll bear with me. We have to be more succinct or we'll not get through this program. Dr. Whitelaw, it's your question to Mr. Yeager.
Okay. About 3 weeks ago, the Log Cabin Republicans began a $300,000 campaign directed at gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender Americans. Rather than tout the attributes of the candidate the Log Cabin has endorsed, Log Cabin has chosen to use lies and half-truths, which try to discredit Al Gore and question his commitment to legislation that would help us become the full and equal citizens that we have a right to be. Some examples: Log Cabin has used quotes that are over 15 years old. At that time, everyone knows that there were very few straight politicians that supported our rights. They've lied about Al Gore's record. They said that he voted against us being big brothers and big sisters. That's a blatant lie. He supported the Kennedy Amendment, which excluded all men who had been convicted of sex crimes against minors.
Bob, what is your question, sir?
My question is, in light of the deceit that Log Cabin has used, is it truly possible for a gay man, as you are, to justify Log Cabin's behavior in its ad campaign, and proper for a gay man to promote a candidate that has never articulated a single pro-gay position?
As far as the ad campaign, my first comment is this is politics. And on both sides of the aisle, there are use of half-truths. And, I don't know intimately what each of those votes that Gore had back then actually were, what each amendment or each bill was actually for. But I can say on our side, like with Dick Cheney, when he was made vice presidential candidate, that there are several of his votes that were misconstrued and misrepresented, that once you got the full story, it made sense. That's why he voted that way. I don't think that Log Cabin put out these ads in a way to say this is how Al Gore is today. I think what the intent was is that Al Gore went through a transition for whatever reason, political reasons or a change in his heart. But to represent that can happen on both sides. The Republican Party, gays in the party are pretty fresh. So we're just showing that can happen on our side too.
Gentlemen, we'll have to move on. Each guest was offered an additional question at the end of this program tonight. I'm not sure at the pace we're going there's going to be time for that, but bear with us. I was hoping to keep the presidential debate to a lot later part of the program, so let's move on to some other issues. And by the way, the questions that you two respectively drafted had not been seen by the others, so this is as much a surprise to you two as it is to anybody else here. In any case, I will now direct several questions prepared by me and by the OUT TV political staff. The first question, gentlemen, has to do with anti-hate crime. As you know, the proposed federal anti-crime legislation got stalled in the 2000 Congress. It's now sitting still. What are your individual positions on this important bill? Dr. Whitelaw, please first, and succinctly, please.
Of course, I support it. The Democratic Party supports it. The Democratic senators have voted almost unanimously. Senator Byrd from West Virginia voted against the Kennedy Amendment. Members of the House of Representatives have. And the reason that it's not law today is because the Republicans who control the Congress and the leadership of the Congress are not allowing even their own members who want to support this to have a chance to vote on it.
What is your position, Mr. Yeager?
Pretty much the same. I'm not going to apologize for the leaders of the Senate. Warner's commission, the Defense Commission or Committee, I believe.
Yes.
It was taken off the military.
The Defense Appropriation Bill, yes.
Yeah. And so, I can't apologize for that. The Log Cabin National Office has worked with senators and the congressmen to try and bring it up. And I think it's something that's important to our community. I believe that there's an honest debate, though, as far as will hate crimes legislation really prevent crimes that are committed to minorities? Or is it that we need to enforce crimes regardless of who the crime is committed against? Do we need to commit those crimes regardless of who they are to the fullest extent of the law? So I think there's an honest debate. I think there's some people that are using it for political gain, but I also think that there's some people that are looking at the issue really deeply, and is it going to get us where we want to be?
On a similar front end of the Employment Non-Discrimination Act is also bogged down. What do the Democrats and Republicans take a stand on there, Dr. Whitelaw?
Do I get to answer all the questions first?
Well, he just spoke, so I was giving you the benefit of the doubt.
The Democratic Party, Al Gore, the Democratic platform all support passage of the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. Al Gore does not believe that people should be discriminated against because of sexual orientation, and we're working within the party to include gender identity as well.
Mark, why did it get bogged down?
I think kind of on the same reasons for hate crimes. Initially, when the bill came up in 1994, there was a big question as far as, is ENDA going to be now a quota type of a system where employers have to now employ so many gays? How is it going to affect religious organizations that may have obviously a different opinion about gays and lesbians and their lifestyle. Since then, a lot of those issues have been taken care of, and there's building support within the Republican Party, but it's just taking some time to work within the party to help them understand. And I think Governor Bush, he has proposed with supporting the fact that he's very favorable about having gays in his administration. He supports the Hormel appointment as ambassador to Luxembourg. I mean, he feels that if they can do the job, they have a part in his administration.
Let's move on to the courts. The United States Supreme Court ruled that the Boy Scouts of America may exclude homosexuals as scouts and as scout leaders. Should private organizations have that right to discriminate, being in a private function? Please.
That's kind of a difficult question, because taking it as if the Boy Scouts were a private organization, my answer would be yes. They have the right to join and assemble as they see fit, just like unions are afforded the right to join together. The issue about the Boy Scouts is that they do take government funding, and they aren't necessarily a private organization. So I think they have a decision to make. If they're going to take public funds, then they need to come under the laws as far as not discriminating. But if they're going to be a fully private organization, then I think they have that right. Now, as far as the gay and lesbian community, we wield a lot of power. The United Way gives a lot of money to the Boy Scouts. A lot of gays and lesbians work in corporate environments where the United Way gets a lot of contributions. So the gay and lesbian community can pull back their funds. United Way is going to therefore want to not support the Boy Scouts and, in effect, use the dollar vote to change the Boy Scouts position.
Dr. Whitelaw, are the Boy Scouts a private organization that should have this right to determine who their members are?
I think technically they are. In practice, they're not. Let me explain.
Right.
Yeah, a very long
Right.
answer, so I'll get a long answer. To answer the question that you
Yes.
asked originally,
Yes.
private organizations do have the right to discriminate. Okay. The Boy Scouts receive funding from the federal government, from state governments, from local governments. They use government facilities, they use government land, they use government property. They are getting the benefit of taxpayer dollars. Therefore, they should not be allowed to discriminate. If they choose to forego those privileges and the use of those taxpayer facilities and the taxpayers' money, then I think they have a right to discriminate. That's.
Well, personally and philosophically, where do you both stand in terms of the government's role in individual rights?
I think the government should stay out of individual rights. I think in too many instances, the government getting involved in our personal rights has caused us problems. Take, for instance, the government having to okay the fact that a man and a woman can marry interferes now with the fact that a man and a man or a woman and a woman cannot join legally. So I think there's some areas where government is involved too much and is preventing us to progress to where we actually have equal rights.
Dr. Whitelaw, comment?
The government has no business in the private lives of adults, period. I think there's a disconnect between what Mark says and what the party that he belongs to says. He said that George Bush will hire gays and lesbians. George Bush has said that he will not hire gays and lesbians, and he says because he cannot find any gays and lesbians that will agree with him. That's the explanation he gives. As far as individual rights, the Republican Party is opposed to a woman's right to choose, and that's a private decision, control of your own body. Republican Party is against eliminating sodomy laws. They're trying to tell me what I can do with my body. They're trying to tell Mark what he can do with his body. They're trying to tell women what they can do with their bodies. The government has no business in doing that, but the Republican Party wants it both ways. They want to control what you're doing when it fits into their plan, their belief system, and they don't want you to have control of your body when it doesn't fit into their belief system.
Perhaps this is a good point for a rebuttal.
Yeah. I guess a case in point about sodomy law, or I guess in general, yeah, there are times in some issues that I think the Republican Party does, there's some hypocrisy there. However, when it comes to the sodomy law, like I know Governor Bush does get a lot of criticism for the sodomy law in Texas, but I need to let everybody know that that law was signed into effect by Ann Richards, the Democratic governor prior to that, and was also brought into effect by a Democrat legislature in Texas. So it comes from both sides. In California, Gray Davis, he has not supported the right for gays and lesbians to have full civil union rights. I mean, he's had a lot of effect in preventing that from coming through. And in California, there's been a lot of Republicans. Proposition 22, the Knight Amendment. A lot of Republicans were against that because they saw that it was too much infringement of the government into people's lives.
Well, let's get to the nitty-gritty of this discussion. Next Tuesday, November 7th, is the election, the presidential election on everybody's mind. I mean, we can be sensitive to local and state contests, but on everybody's mind, obviously, is what's going to happen with Mr. Gore and Mr. Bush. So let's say it. Why should gay voters go one way or the other? Dr. Whitelaw, you want to start here?
It's his turn.
Please.
Asking all the questions
That's
first.
true.
I'll start.
Please do.
The Log Cabin Republicans endorsed Governor Bush for several reasons. They approached him and said that to garner an endorsement, we need some action from you. And one thing was that we wanted to have some public representation of inclusion. In the Republican convention, he came through with that and was very supportive of Congressman Colby from Arizona to have a keynote speech, prime time, at the convention. There were not any other congressional speakers during that whole convention. There's a lot of criticism that he did not talk about gay or lesbian issues. But from my perspective, from a Republican perspective, we feel that his position up there was even greater because he was being honored for the work that he's done on international trade. He went up there, did a spectacular job. There were some distractors, unfortunately, from the Texas delegation that hung their heads. Even though I think that was a sad representation of the party, I do support their freedom of speech.
What about Mr. Cheney's role in all this, though, and his voting right? I mean, his voting record.
His voting record. Like I mentioned before, I think there has been some distortions as far as voting record, like with South Africa, about voting on sanctions for South Africa. The reason is that in that vote, there was also a U.S., if I get this correct, recognition of a terrorist group or terrorist organization in South Africa. So he was voting against that. He wasn't voting against Nelson Mandela. He was just saying that we're not going to recognize this organization. And I think he's come a long way. That was several years back, and just like Al Gore's voting record in the early 80s, that was a different time. And now, during the vice presidential debate, he had some very progressive issues regarding civil unions. And I think that based off of his personal relationship with his daughter, I think that something that we as a party can build on to grow and learn and become more inclusive in that respect.
Dr. Whitelaw, Mr. Gore, and Mr. Lieberman.
I want to make a comment, before I answer, I want to make a comment. That's
Please.
a classic block and bridge technique that politicians use. A question is asked, and then he starts talking about South Africa. We're supposed to be talking about issues of importance
No,
to
he asked
to
about
gay
Cheney's
and-
voting record.
but his voting record on gay and lesbian issues, not on South Africa. That's not what we're here to talk about. And it's a typical political thing.
Can I respond to that
Okay.
after?
Yes,
All right.
please.
I'm voting for Al Gore, and I'm voting for Al Gore because I believe that Al Gore will do more for the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered Americans than any other candidate. He has proven that he has had a change in heart from where he began 25, 30 years ago in politics. I would remind people that since the Stonewall riots in 1969, all of the national gay and lesbian organizations have been formed based on the principle that we could change people's hearts and minds by using social and political activism. And I think Al Gore and the Democratic Party are prime examples of the success and the wisdom of that strategy. Gore had a 90% approval rating in his voting record in the Senate in 1988, according to HRC. He's been fighting for us. Anyone who thinks that the party's platform is not controlled by the presidential nominee is fooling themselves. The Democratic platform includes support for hate crimes legislation, support for employment non-discrimination, support for us serving openly in the military, and also support for recognition of our same-sex relationships and benefits that are equitable. He has not supported marriage. He has a problem with that use of that term, as many Americans do. Only a third of Americans support gay marriage, okay? But I'm not interested in the word. I'm interested in the rights that go along with that legal contract, and Al Gore is committed to help us obtain those things.
How about Mr. Lieberman's more conservative voting record and his religious leanings?
I think Mr. Lieberman's religion has been something that's really been kind of left out of this, kind of a hidden question, and I don't really want to go there. Joe Lieberman is a man of high moral value. He criticized President Clinton when it was not a popular thing in the Democratic Party to do that, and he was right to do that. He has been able to separate his responsibility as a public servant from his religious beliefs. I think he's done a much better job of doing that than Republican elected officials have done. A lot of the anti-gay rhetoric, a lot of the anti-gay votes in the Congress have been based on religious beliefs, and I think Joe Lieberman has been able to put that behind him, as John Kennedy was able to put his Catholicism in a separate compartment from his responsibilities as president. So I have no problems with Joe Lieberman's religious beliefs.
Mark, let's go back to Mr. Bush and his, quote, gay platform. Is there such a thing?
Dr. Whitelaw had mentioned that Bush had stated that he had no place, he would see no position in his administration for someone who's gay. That was a long time ago, and I've seen a steep learning curve that Governor Bush has taken since he's come into this race, and I think I think he's a man of integrity. Log Cabin did put our efforts behind John McCain, and I think at that point he stepped back and said, you've already made your commitment, and I think it took a while for him to understand that gay issues that he didn't support, that not all gays are like what he had perceived them to be. And I don't know what he perceived them to be. But I think he was going off of that perception that he didn't see somebody who was going to be out there, the activist, being a part of his administration because he didn't see his administration coming from that perspective. Just two different frames of thought. But I'd like to quickly go back to the Cheney voting record, and I'll actually go back to his voting record as far as gays and lesbians, and it hasn't been that great. But I also go back to Gore. Gore, at least 5 times that I know of, voted with Jesse Helms. That was a different time, and what the Democrats say is he's evolved. But something has come up, or that I've become aware of recent, in that there's a pastor in Topeka, Kansas, Pastor Phelps, who has a website that says God Hates Fags. And he has picketed in front of the Matthew Shepard funeral. And he got invitations to the 93 and 97 Democratic, or to the presidential inauguration. And he was a big backer during Gore's 1988 presidential campaign. And I'm not going to hold that against him, but Governor Bush should be afforded the same ability to grow as as Vice Presidential Gore is being afforded now. So, I'm not gonna try and make excuses about Bush's past. I'm not gonna try and hold Gore's past voting record against him. But there should be the same respect given on both sides.
Gentlemen.
I want to respond to that, because I was going to bring that up in my opening question, the Fred Phelps thing. This is one of the lowest things that Log Cabin has ever done. Okay, the photograph that Fred Phelps put on his website, and Fred Phelps is no friend of Al Gore. Fred Phelps is no friend of the gay and lesbian community. There was a reason that he put that photo on his website, and it was so that people like Log Cabin could bring it up and use it against Al Gore. Wait, let me finish. Okay, in 1988, Fred Phelps was a Democratic Party official in the state of Kansas. The photograph was taken at a fundraiser for the Democratic Party of Kansas, which was at Fred Phelps' son's home. Al Gore was there. A lot of people go to fundraisers. A lot of people want to have their pictures taken with important politicians. This was before Fred Phelps started his hate-mongering, gay-bashing activities. That did not start until 1991. When he started doing that, he was stripped of his role in the Democratic Party in Kansas and thrown out of the party. Okay? Since that time, he has picketed Al Gore. Okay? He's picketed Al Gore because of Al Gore's support for our rights. And to bring him up and try to associate Al Gore with Fred Phelps is despicable. Yeah. The Log Cabin Republicans are getting in bed with one of the worst gay-bashing hate mongers in this country.
Gentlemen, we're about out of time. Mark, a quick response, and then I'm going to ask you to collect your thoughts because we're going to go to a break with Georgia Equality Project about encouraging people to get out to vote, and then we'll come back and let you have a 1-minute summary. Okay. But finish your main point here.
Yeah, and I'm not bringing up Phelps to try and go tit for tat. My concern is that if he had invitation to Clinton Gore's second inauguration, there must still be some involvement. But whether he supports Gore or not doesn't affect me. Obviously, his views on homosexuality do concern me. He has the right to be that way. But if this is true, then, so be it. But all I'm asking is there needs to be tolerance from the Democrats as well as the Republicans for the others' involvement in their party. And the only way that we're going to get to the rights that we feel that are supposed to be given to us, we need to be working from both sides. And so I didn't bring that up to try and start a fire, but I brought it up that there are accusations on both sides, and both sides have had a bad history, and both sides can still grow.
Gentlemen, collect your thoughts. We'll be back in just a moment for your final summaries.
That is the same crap that Kevin Ivers started in
we'll just edit the best we can.
I cannot believe that you would...
I'm not coming over this way, but I mean, when can I tell you to shut up?
look at you and say,
Okay. Just remember, time is time.
You heard about it?
So is this a tight minute?
You heard about it?
Well, no, we'll play it loose, but, you know, we can't have 4 or 5.
The better you guys do it, the better it's gonna be for
Right.
us when we get through.
Right.
and the more
We don't want to have, what we
the
actually,
more we say now, the less they have to cut from the, I mean, the less we say now, the less they have to cut from what we're doing.
well, just understand that what we want to try to do, if we have to cut, we want to cut between responses and not during them. I don't want to have to cut anything you're saying like there. But if you keep going, I'm sorry. Anyhow, you're going to go first? Okay, here we go.
Rob,
Yes,
when you have your hands on there,
yeah.
you raise it up and see it.
Do what?
Your hands are like this on top of the paint.
Oh, like this?
Yeah, I can see you. Yeah, I can see
Keep them back? Yeah,
you. It's just for this final response.
I know. I'm just rolling. Gentlemen, we have just a couple of minutes, and we'd like to get back to some of the nitty-gritty of what we said here tonight. And Dr. Bob Whitelaw, it's your turn first to give us your summary statement.
This is the most important election in my lifetime, and I'm pretty old. I'm 54 years old. And it's the most important election in most of your lifetimes. The religious right is trying to take over the federal government. The Republican Party is has been controlled by the religious right. George Bush is the nominee of the Republican Party because the religious right supported him in South Carolina and Michigan, and he owes them. Al Gore has been supporting us for a long time, as long as almost any other straight politician. We have come a long way in the last 30 years since Stonewall. It has been based on the principle that we can change people's hearts and minds through social and political activism. Al Gore has changed. He has a steady record of improvement. He's not changed overnight. He has supported us. He has made sure that we are included in the Democratic Party platform. He supports our issues. He deserves our vote. I will be voting for Al Gore on next Tuesday. I would ask that every one of you not only vote for Al Gore, but call your friends, call your family, talk to people on the street that you don't know, and ask them to vote for Al Gore. Our future depends on it.
Mark Yeager, please, a summary statement.
Tonight we have discussed several issues that are important to the gay and lesbian community. Issues that we haven't talked about, however, should be equally important to our community are issues of education, Social Security, health care, and tax reform. We need an educational system that is safe, where no child, gay or straight, is left behind. If the system fails a child, the parent should have the power to send their child to a better performing school where they can learn. Governor Bush wants parents to have that power. Our Social Security system needs to be reformed. Al Gore promises yet another entitlement program with the Social Security Plus plan, which would continue to pass on financial burdens down to generations to come. Governor Bush wants us to be able to invest in our future. Lastly, we have tax reform that does not discriminate. Governor Bush has a tax reform that does not discriminate against those who do not fit Al Gore's criteria to receive tax relief. His discrimination is soft, but it is sure. Most gays and lesbians will not qualify for the multiple requirements needed for his tax relief. Governor Bush believes each of us, regardless of sexual orientation or family situation, should be able to enjoy greater use of our income and not have it surely spent by the government. The Log Cabin Republicans are working within the party to make equality for gays and lesbians. We still have some work to do, but if you look back to where we were 8 years ago, the tide has changed. We cannot do it alone. Progress requires partnership from both sides. If you want to live in a country where personal responsibility is valued and individual freedoms are protected, I encourage you to vote for George W. Bush, November the 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. We're out of time. Our guests tonight on OutTV's Election 2000 have been Dr. Bob Whitelaw, Jr. of Georgia's Stonewall Democrats and Mr. Mark Yeager of Georgia's Log Cabin Republicans. Thank you, gentlemen, both of you. It's been a most informative and interesting evening. I wish you well, and we'll see you again. And we'll have to do a separate close. There are thank yous to do.
Right. What happened here?
Mike is under his eyes.
Oh.
It's rubbing up against every time he.
Just right there at the last?
Oh,
Yeah.
Is it-
The last statement.
Okay, can we get you to do that again?
oops. Sorry, I missed this again.
You want the whole thing?
No, I just need,
The part about individual liberty really chokes me up.
Yeah, we don't need the whole
I'm
thing.
just about vomiting.
Where do you need it from? Where?
Yeah, what do you need it from? What
Where?
do you need it from?
From what part? You want the whole thing?
Yeah.
Oh, you want the whole thing?
His whole,
Okay.
And that money is more
Probably the best.
important than justice.
We're not going to run it twice.
It's probably a better argument for running Al Gore than I
Tonight we discussed several issues that are important to the gay and lesbian community. Issues that we haven't talked about that should be equally important to our community are issues of education, Social Security reform, and tax reform. We need an educational system that is safe and where no child, gay or straight, is left behind. If the system fails the child, the parent should have the power to send their child to a better performing school. Governor Bush wants the parents to have that power. Our Social Security system needs to hold a future for each individual without compromising promises made to our elders. Al Gore promises yet another entitlement program with Social Security Plus, which would continue to pass on financial burdens to generations to come. Governor Bush wants us to be able to invest in our future. Lastly, we need to have tax reform that does not discriminate against those who do not fit in Al Gore's criteria to receive tax relief. His discrimination is soft, but it is sure. Most gays and lesbians will not qualify for the multiple requirements needed for tax relief. Governor Bush believes each of us, regardless of sexual orientation or family situation, should be able to enjoy greater use of our income and not have it surely spent by the government. The Log Cabin Republicans are working within the party to make equality for gays and lesbians. We still have work to do, but if you look back to where we were 8 years ago, the tide has changed. We cannot do it alone. Progress requires partnership from both sides. If you want to live in a country where personal responsibility is valued and individual freedoms are protected, I encourage you to vote for George W. Bush on November the 7th. Thank you.
Good.
All right.
No scratching.
It's very, I don't know anything about your financial status, but I should be arguing his side, because I'm in the top 1%. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
You may,
Well,
I'm not in the top 1%.
are you gonna inherit like $14 million? You got a trust fund?
Nope, but I want it to be off my own hard work.
so where have we come in 8 years with the Republicans in terms of the religious right isn't as strong? I mean, what are you saying there in that statement?
A good example of that is as soon as Bush met with gay Republicans, the Family Research Council.
I'm gonna get my $12,000. That was not on camera, was it?
The Family Research Council, by James Dobson, that whole group,
Yeah.
they demanded a meeting with Bush, and he wouldn't have it. He had met with them, he knew where they stood, and they started running ads to try and pressure him to meet with them, to try and build back his anti-gay rhetoric and come to their side again. And that's where I
So is it access mostly or what?
as far as the
Yeah, people, they're listening. I'm sorry.
This is very interesting point, 'cause a part that I did not get to say in my question, I was talking about asserting that Log Cabin would have any influence with President Bush and the religious right that controls him. The Republican Party is patently absurd unless the Bush campaign has made some secret deal to get the Log Cabin endorsement. And basically what he's telling me is that's true. They had made a secret deal.
Yeah.
But I would warn them, okay?
I mean,
Has it been, I haven't seen any publicity about it.
about a secret deal where
Well, a deal for your endorsement. The assumption has been that you certainly didn't do it because of the stand on gay rights. You did it, number one, because you were the leadership of the National Law Cabinet, I'm not talking about the local people, was threatened with a takeover by the group of Republicans that met with Bush in Texas. And for Rick Taffel and Kevin Ivers to protect their job, they had to deliver an endorsement to protect their income. And that's the way it's being perceived. And if that's not the truth, then Law Cabin should be out telling people and showing people that it's not the case. You've had plenty of time to do it, and you haven't done it.
Well,
I really, I've tried, with the exception of the one little thing, because I really was very disappointed that somebody locally would bring up that particular issue. I really tried to make it log cabin. I didn't say you, because I don't see this as a personal thing. And I have a lot of, this sounds terrible, but I do have gay friends that are Republicans. Johnny Heath.
Well, we all do.
Johnny Heath and I did a Victory Foundation training weekend together. He's a great guy. I don't agree with him politically, but I don't think he's a mean-spirited person, and I can't imagine him having brought up something like that.
Well, I didn't bring it up as a mean spirit. I mean,
But it certainly comes across that way, and to be honest about it, I'm actually grateful that you brought it up, because I think it shows to what depths Republicans will go to get George Bush in play.
So the fact that the Democrats scare the gays in saying that a Republican is elected president, that the Supreme Court appointees are going to be all anti-gay. Isn't that a scare tactic too?
That is an objective evaluation of what George Bush has said. George Bush says that Clarence Thomas, and God, I wish he were not from Georgia. He's an embarrassment to Georgia. Okay, and Anthony Scalia are his models. Those are the two most homophobic members of the Supreme Court. And if that's his model, what can we expect but a Supreme Court that is going to take away the little that we've already gained?
Isn't it a Democratic appointee that upheld the Georgia sodomy law? Isn't it a Republican appointee that wrote this dissenting response on the Colorado anti-gay?
All right. Well,
I mean,
he's also said, I'm not going to make the same mistakes my father made in my appointments. That was a Bush appointment, and
but if you look at his Texas record,
the
Texas record has
the Texas governor does not appoint justices in Texas, and for George Bush to take any credit for those appointments is out and out deception.
Who appoints them?
It is appointed by a commission. The person who runs the state of Texas is the lieutenant governor. And I hate to tell you this, but it's not quite as bad as Georgia. I mean, it's worse than Georgia. The most powerful person in Georgia politics probably is the lieutenant governor, because he controls the legislature. The most powerful political figure in Texas is the person who is lieutenant governor.
Who is a Republican, right?
Yes. Okay, that is who it is. George Bush is taking credit for things that he has not done. He uses half-truths. He said,
though, right?
all right. Example: Patient's Bill of Rights. We weren't talking about non-gay issues, even though you snuck all that gobbledygook in at the end. It has nothing to do with what we were supposed to be talking about.
But all these issues are gay issues.
Well, they're citizens issues.
The fact that Gore's tax.
I'm told all the time, Bob, you think every issue is a gay issue. And here you're turning it around on me. I was told specifically to talk about gay and lesbian issues. All right, let's talk about Patient Bill of Rights. George Bush is going around the country touting the Patient's Bill of Rights bill in Texas, taking credit for it. The truth of the matter is, the bill was initially passed in 1975, and George Bush vetoed it. Okay, it was passed again by the Democratic House okay, in Texas by veto-proof margin, and thanks to one courageous Republican state senator from Waco, Texas, he worked with the Democrats and got a veto-proof majority in the Senate, okay, and George Bush had no choice. He could sign it or he could let it become law without his signature. He did not even have the courage to sign the bill, okay? He let it become a law without his signature and then goes and tries to take credit for it. What kind of ethics is that?
Okay, so let me turn it back to you. During the time when Clinton and Gore came into office, for 2 years they had control.
Yes.
They could have done whatever they wanted to, basically.
Bring up a specific issue that
Okay.
we'll argue.
Don't ask, don't tell.
All right.
And then-
All right. The problem with those, not being a Georgian, you do not understand what happened with donuts. I will educate you. Okay. The chairman of the Senate Senate Armed Services Committee is a senator from Georgia, Sam Nunn, one of the biggest homophobes in the world, and also
A Democrat, right?
A Democrat. I'm not saying all Democrats are good. I never did say they were all good. Okay.
But all Republicans
All
are
right.
bad.
And I did not. And I have given.
I'm not saying
I
you
gave
said
that
that.
state senator that's a Republican in Texas credit for helping the Democrats. I would, if you want to bring up the hate crimes, I'll give those 7 Republican senators that helped Ted Kennedy pass
No, but
that
that-
amendment.
Or tell us about Don't Ask,
All
Don't
right.
Tell.
All right. Don't ask, don't tell. This is what the truth of that is. Sam Nunn would not support it. Sam Nunn was the most powerful senator in the Senate at that time, okay? He told Bill Clinton and Al Gore, I will never let this happen. All right. They said, okay, can we reach a compromise to allow gays and lesbians to at least serve? Okay. They came up with Don't Ask, Don't Tell, okay, which on paper, okay, should have allowed us to serve. It should have stopped the witch
What
hunts.
happened with the Don't Pursue part?
It should have stopped.
Should have had stopped that.
It should have stopped the witch hunts. That was Gore's interpretation of it. That was the Democratic Party's interpretation of it. Okay, and it hasn't worked out. Why hasn't it worked out? It's because the other side used deceit, and it was not just Republicans. It was people like Sam Nunn. It was people like Colin Powell, who was such a hero to so many people. He's a huge homophobe. He may be a good general. He may be a humanitarian, but he hates us. Okay,
I do.
and that is the reason that Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It has not worked. It was an honest attempt to fulfill a campaign promise when they couldn't give us exactly what they said they would give us. And it's because of the way that it's been administered. It's because of the way the military has done. It's because the Congress, controlled by the Republicans, has allowed the military to get away with it. That is the truth of that.
Gentlemen, we have some high-paid talent here that needs to go home. Would you like to take this to the parking lot? I'll walk out with you.
I'm very passionate.
No, I know you are, and it's great.
I mean, he doesn't-
I'd love to sit here all night.
No, he's from Colorado. He doesn't know Sam Nunn. Sam Nunn did wonderful things for Georgia. I am so glad that he was our senator because he used all that power to keep all the military money pouring into Georgia. We've never had a military base closed. I mean, he's helped our economy. I mean, there's so many good things that he did for the state, but he doesn't like us, okay?
But
and
sentiment
he used that
is-
same power against us.
Sentiment is changing on it. Actually, I came across a study that in '92, like 67% were strongly opposed to gays in the military. I think as of '98, it was down to 30-something.
So why haven't the Republicans come out of the closet and helped us on this?
But-
and it's
but if you-
it's because the bad Republicans won't let the good Republicans vote their conscience.
You're right. And I think what
You're going home on that one.
no, but
I will not say that every Republican is bad. There are
Right.
good Republicans.
and that's why when I
Okay,
make
but
the
they're not
argument,
allowed to vote their conscience.
and that's why I make the argument that if you have both sides, I mean, in the past, especially 8 years ago, the Republicans had no reason to listen to us. There was no voting base.
The reason
for
they
it.
should listen to us is because it is right, not because it's to their political advantage.
But politics, I mean,
I'm being
can
too
you say that-
idealistic. I'm being too
Can you say that
idealistic.
everything that Al Gore does is because it's right, or does he do some things because of politics
I will.
too?
All right. Okay. Since we're off camera, I'll tell you. I met with Al Gore on January 20th at his home, at his dining room table. okay? And we talked about a lot of gay and lesbian issues, okay? And the easy ones we did very, very quickly. I was only 4 of us spoke, and the board selected me as one of the people to talk. And we talked we were supposed to talk 45 minutes. We're actually there an hour and a half because we got into a deep discussion about our rights as couples, our rights as individuals. We brought up things like immigration. He didn't have a clue about immigration. He didn't realize that there were gay men and lesbians who would go overseas, fall in love with someone, and the only way they could bring them back with them was to get on a student visa, and that only lasted, for a couple of years, and then they'd have to go back. We gave an example. I gave examples of my friends. I've got a dear friend in New York City who has his PhD. He's brilliant. He makes a ton of money, and he's in the top 1%. His lover is from the Netherlands. He's been over here for 2 years on a student visa. He's a computer whiz. They are both such valuable people. We should have them here. They're moving back to the Netherlands. They're moving. Why? I mean, just because of the good Republicans won't stand up to the religious right and get them off y'all's back. I pray for the day when the two of us are. I hope we're both still alive then, can sit down here and talk about all those things that you brought up in your closing statement, and the gay issues are no longer on the table because we will already have
gotten by. Yeah.
That's what I'm working for. I'm not working to overthrow the Republican Party. I am working for gay and lesbian and bisexual and transgender Americans so that we have our rights.
The chairman has spoken.
And I'm not so sure. All right, he is the founder of Log Cabin, okay? He is circulating an email forwarded to me by somebody, okay, that personally condemns the leadership of Log Cabin for having
You'll be real careful. You watch that. Well, you were here. You'll know what to do.
I want all of us to be on this.
Yeah, this is an important one. Okay, we have one more then to Mr. What was it? Oh, Mark, is there such thing as a Bush gay platform? I gave the thank yous, and I said, thank you both. This has been the most interesting and informative. Da, da, da. You've already got that. Do you want that again?
Yes.
Okay. So,
When you close, Rob,
you want to thank you, gentlemen. We're out of time.
Yes.
All of that.
I would like you to close, and then we should say, and to our viewers, I should say, thank you for watching Out TV tonight.
Okay. You're rolling. Thank you, gentlemen. We're out of time. Our guests tonight have been representing the Georgia Democratic Party, Dr. Bob Whitelaw, Jr. of the Stonewall Democrats, and Mr. Mark Yeager from the Georgia... I'm sorry. Thank you, gentlemen. We're out of time. Our guests tonight on Out TV's Election 2000 have been Dr. Bob Whitelaw, Jr. of Georgia's Stonewall Democrats and Mr. Mark Yeager, representing Georgia's Log Cabin Republicans. Gentlemen, it's been a both enjoyable evening and a most informative exchange of views, and thank you again. Out TV Atlanta wishes to express thanks to Dr. Mark... Can I pick it up there? Out TV Atlanta wishes to thank Dr. Mike Cordell, Senior Minister, and Mr. Jonathan Smith, Business Administrator, St. Mark United Methodist Church in Midtown, for making these facilities available for tonight's program. We would also like to acknowledge our executive producer, Mr. Mike Maloney, and the entire Out TV Atlanta staff. In behalf of our guests, Georgia Equality Project, Georgia Stonewall Democrats, Georgia Log Cabin Republicans, this is Rob Martin of Out TV Atlanta urging all Georgians to get out and vote on November the 7th. Thank you from Out TV Atlanta. Can I just do that one line?
Start. Thank you.
I just wrote it out. Thank you. And remember, okay, I got it. Thank you. And remember OutTV Atlanta's motto, connecting our community with pride. And good night. That's pretty serious.
Right.
And good night.
Hi, guys.